Mimi, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to finally be on Friendly Aussie Podcast with you. I'm a Canna believer. I'm an absolutely on this side of the fence. Like nothing can change my mind.
With the boys on the couch back in the day, I'll never forget.
What we talked about. Remember how much we ate for something that is listed with side effects of short-term memory impairment. Like people really remember their experiences with cannabis, right? Would you chop up in there?
See how much vapor?
That's a lot of vapor.
I noticed the more I smoked, the better my life got. It sounds absurd, but the more I've smoked, the better my life has gotten. The only way you can die from cannabis is by having it fall on you. Like a heavy amount of cannabis just dropped on you. That's the only way.
But to me, the no is in the grow. It's like raising a child. People are going through degrees now to learn how, and there are ancient skill sets on how to grow appropriately, how to breed the right strain, how, to water it effectively, the light, the air quality, everything, And sometimes it's also a recreational touch point. It's not necessarily a medical case or something like that, which makes it very special because there's something about cannabis that I say brings people together and it shares, it gives, it's part of nature.
Grab your chop, take a big hit, take a trip down under and don't quit it. Sit back and relax, you got Joe LaGrasso in the house. He's the host of the TheFAP podcast and he's telling you to take a big old hit. Grab your buds and join the TheFAP, where we keep it pretty chill, talking about the smoke.
Welcome back to the Friendly Aussie Podcast. I have today a legend in the cannabis industry, in the medicinal industry. Mimi, welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to finally be on Friendly Aussie Buds with you. I've had a great time watching you grow, and now I'm super excited to finally be here.
It's funny because we've talked for like maybe a year or two. 2 years? 2 years at least?
2 years.
Maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
We were supposed to do a podcast probably 2 years ago. And I don't know, life came up, I guess.
As it happens in the cannabis space.
It gets busy. And in those 2 years, you've actually had quite a journey. You were the head of business development in Australian, the largest cannabis clinic in the country with over 100,000 patients. You helped build that.
Yes, indeed. It's definitely a glory point and something that's really, really special to me in terms of my career. I had the luxury of being able to help to establish a lot of the first workings of Australian, which were very patient-focused, although we get a lot of rap for it not being patient-focused, but it definitely was built on trying to really, create a really seamless ride for patients, and which it really did, which is why the numbers are there to show. And it's a great system, and obviously it's grown very rapidly, and I've done a couple of other different things over the last couple of years as well, but that initial first phase was incredibly advantageous, for lots of different things, and in particular my growth and my development and my affiliation to the cannabis industry as a whole. So I'm very lucky and feel very privileged that I had that history. But it's also why we got connected, right?
That's it. It was just a strange day for me. I remember we had a little chat, and then we had a Zoom, and it was pretty much a podcast, which we didn't record. We should have. It was great. But we know you ended up at Australian, and then you've kind of gone on to do your own consulting. But before we get into that, let's jump back to young Mimi before she was the cannabis queen. Right? Like, how did you become Mimi of cannabis, right?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, as you can hear just a little, I have a bit of an American accent. So I actually was raised in LA. I raised in Australia, but also partly in LA. So I did my high school and my college out there, and everybody knows when you come from SoCal or Southern California, there's definitely going to be this affiliation with cannabis, or just this inclination. And as I grew up there, and that was early 2000s, you've always got this understanding that there is this movement towards this medical and this legalization, which always dawned upon me. And then not really a big user or anything like that because of lack of access, I would say that's really why it was. Back in the day, it was really in the streets and the hood, and it was hard to get, and so we had to deal differently. So there was just like no access to it. And then coming to Australia, and I studied pharmacy again. Just an understanding that there was a benefit there, but never really seeing it. My partner is a cancer survivor, and every day we deal with, bits and pieces of that leftover. And it's when you have cancer or when you survive it, you really live with it daily. Mm-hmm. And so we're constantly coming on to how can we better his overall health and his wellness. And as a pharmacist, I was always the conspiracy theorist or the vitamin lady. And so I always looked for alternative therapies, and I was very drawn to them, but couldn't, I understood everything about medicine. And so it kind of felt like the perfect concoction or the perfect mix for me jumping out of pharma against the big pharma, and then finding something quite niche that's nature-led, but is natural and doesn't necessarily lead to long-term effects. And that's really what drove me. So, it's a connection to a human being. And I think that's also what makes people canna believers. That's what makes people, move or just change their view or change their stigma or actually have an open conversation for the first time, is when it's connected to somebody in their life. And that to me is really special. And sometimes it's also a recreational touch point. It's not necessarily a medical case or something like that, which makes it very special, because there's something about cannabis that I say brings people together, and it shares, it gives, it's part of nature. Again, a little bit fruity, but that's okay. I'm happy to be here because it's helped me to really connect with the plant, connect with what its capacity is, what its capabilities are, and where I find that it's cure. And I know that we should be careful with the word cure, but really it does bring a lot of benefit.
It treats a lot of ailments, like.
I'm a canna believer. I'm an absolutely on this side of the fence. Like nothing can change my mind. So, but that's from experience, and from experience with patients and the change in their overall quality of life. So from an early age, I knew about it. I knew about the legalization, again, coming from LA and being in Southern California and being that, 17, 18, 19 years old, the whole idea of Snoop Dogg and, people like rapping in the streets. And that was still really, really rife in the early 2000s. And so watching all of that culture, I think I was already affiliated, very subconsciously, without having to do it. You just become affiliated with this culture and you understand it. And then, throughout 2010 and stuff, and you'd see these Harold and Kumar movies. And, now when I talk to doctors about Harold and Kumar and I say, like the Harold and Kumar movie, and they just, and then they pass out and then they wake up and then they do some more. And, sometimes the bongs are so long. And, we actually have to have these conversations with doctors, because if you don't have this conversation with them, we're missing out on a piece of culture that every user understands, and, they would know of it, or they've seen it, or they've wished they've had a bong that big.
I remember buying my first bong. It was like a plastic gripper style thing. It was green, but on the site where I bought it, there was this 90 centimeter kind of thing. And I'm like, yeah, that seems like something I'll buy one day. I need
90
that.
centimeters.
And you'd have to have someone else light it for you. You wouldn't even be able to have, you wouldn't be able to do it yourself. But I really like how you talk about it, for the culture and the connection. One of the slogans we like to use at Friendly Aussie Buds is cultivating connection through cannabis. It's something I think I deeply resonate with. Being able to break barriers down without alcohol, right? I think, in Australia, alcohol is the predominant choice of getting inebriated, I guess, and socializing, and that's the recreational activity.
Taking the first layer off.
And I find with alcohol, it's great because your inhibitions drop, so you can let yourself out. But what I find with alcohol happens is your IQ drops, but your ego goes up, right? And when your ego goes up and your IQ drops, you do a lot of dumb things and you say a lot of dumb things. And even then, the conversation often becomes a little I don't know, it's a lot of gossip and it's a lot of, I call it lower brow, like talk, communication.
Yes.
When you're high and when you're smoking with cannabis, I think your ego drops. Your IQ, depends who you are, right?
Yeah.
Me, I think it goes up. I just start going, connections are made, I'm bang, 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 bang. Some people, but
and that's what they use it for, and that's okay. Like,
that helps them
no
switch
judgment,
off.
right?
It helps them switch off.
Exactly. The connection part is really special. I speak a lot about community, creation of community and connection coming from the cannabis plant. And I think that this doesn't come from its medicinal use. It really does come with its historical use and why it's really kind of connective, because, you know, obviously they did it black market, or we've been hiding for 100 years in terms of use. And the stigma associated with it as, instantaneously you're just a druggie. So when you talk about connection, like, people have these deeper experiences, and when they do connect, and when, the ha 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 laughing part is over, or, the where am I, is the room moving or is it not moving, or, all these funny feelings. But when people are a little bit more tolerant, people understand the effects, and they really, elevate in this moment, like, the kind of connections are almost unbreakable.
Mm-hmm.
And people talk about, remember when we were like back in the day and we had that
bucket bongs with the boys on the couch back in the day. I'll never forget.
What we talked about. Remember how much we ate. Remember what we did. There's a lot of, for something that, is listed with, side effects of, short-term memory impairment. Like, people really remember their experiences with cannabis, right? And they really connect over it, and it's something that lasts a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And that connection is one part, because you create a little community. And before it was a community of use, and now in the medical community, you actually are creating different communities. And we see it, whether it's online or social, or just people coming together, very early on with Alternative and their patient card. Like, there were people who had groups that got together, and, you needed a card to get in. And like, no lies about that. So that's something that's really special. Like, if you think about, just that history, but previous histories, is that the connection was a bond, and it was a bond to something that made people feel better. And that is really special about cannabis, because making you feel better is so subjective. It's not objective whatsoever. I can't tell you, I can't feel what you're feeling. It's the same like pain. Like, I can't feel your pain. I could have exactly the same levels.
You can empathize, but you can't feel it.
No, I can't feel it. And so that's what leads things. That's what drives things. And that's what drives people. And I think also then that drives their connection back to the plant itself. That's why they connected to it, because they feel this, they feel good. They feel, it's a lot of feeling associated.
Yeah. I think one of the things maybe the medical industry, or at least, your traditional medical industry, overlooks is that sense of connection in treatment, right? Like, if we're talking about depression, anxiety, PTSD, any of the mental things, 100%, you can believe that having a community and connecting with people to talk about whatever it is that's going on is probably beneficial to that patient's health. So it's funny that we kind of got this bullshit assumption of recreational and medicinal, right? A lot of us that are true believers understand it's all medicinal and it's all recreational, right? Life's here to be enjoyed, right? Like, I'm not here to be treated like a patient for my life. I'm here to enjoy it.
But it's because we're conditioned to think that feeling good
is not okay.
Yeah, and especially if it's from something else. But I mean, it's okay with alcohol.
It's that weird idea that I think gets grounded in a lot of the stoic sort of stuff, right? You have, you don't want to have anything control you. You don't want to have anything feel like you need it to get by. You need it to do this, because effectively, if that gets taken away from you, you're saying you can't be your full self. Some people will put that stance and say, no, you need to be strong man, strong this, strong that, whatever. That's fine if that's your opinion. But my argument is, throughout history, us humans have used tools. We've used tools. This is my tool to vaporize. I'll use it in a moment. But we've used tools, and I think cannabis is a tool, right? To feeling good, feeling better, whatever it happens to be. But fundamentally, it's neither good nor bad. It's just a resource. I like, that's how I look at it. And I think the other thing we have to kind of look at is there really just should not be judgment on choosing how someone chooses to look at the way they live in the world, if it's not causing harm to others, right? An alcoholic that's drinking every day, if they're not touching, punching, screaming, yelling, abusing, fucking drink your life away. I do not care.
Be doing
but
it silently.
I would like to. I don't hear too many silent drunks. I just don't hear about it. You know, there's the depresso drunks, I suppose, but you know, it's only themselves that they're hurting.
I think when we look at, you know, how different alcohol can be and how accepted it is really in industry, like in life, and it's, you know, it's still celebrated, and there's also this connection between being so, you know, hidey-tidy or very upmarket if you choose the right wine. And, you know, that's different to how we look at cannabis. And again, is it because cannabis breaks you down so that you become more vulnerable, more, you know, more calm, more relaxed, whereas alcohol can charge you, even though it is a depressant, it still can charge you more. Like with cannabis, the connections are so much more profound, and with alcohol, sometimes they're not as profound, and it's also a drive of what people want from it. So it's nice to be able to talk about the differences between these two. You definitely
it's unfair that they get lumped together as well, I think.
Yes.
You know, I don't think cannabis should be lumped up with alcohol, but it's the only way we can help people relate to it.
To do the comparison, right? But why can't we have an accepted, and I mean, this is something that I really talk a lot about. It's about elevating the cannabis experience and elevating the cannabis user out of, again, this judgment pre-filled forms kind of a situation of how you look at a user, right? Mm-hmm. And the concept generally is, you know, they're not well educated, they're not, you know, wealthy, they're, you know, they're definitely not those who work out, they're, you know, definitely not people who are high achievers or high functioning. And so I've for a long time tried to coin a term in market called HFDAs, which is a high functioning
drug addict.
Yes, pretty much but let's just change it to HF, you know, CUs.
Cannabis.
So a HF, so it's a high functioning cannabis user, because there are a lot of people, and what we generally don't see is, you know, it's okay to, you know, maybe roll a joint, and again, smoking is not really preferred in the medical space. So, you know, we have to talk about the safety element associated with that. There's a lot of data coming out also about vaporizing and stuff like that. I think it's still a matter of choice. I still think that combustion does occur, and they're going to be able to have their benefits. I still support the use of a vaporizer in particular. No punches here, but, you know, the Mighty Medic is really something that, you know, I don't get anything from it, but I've just seen changes, as well as I've seen people move from bongs to that.
To vapes, yeah.
And it's simply because of that product itself. Yeah. So
I would completely agree. The Mighty Medic was big game changer. It came out in like 2014.
Yeah.
The fact that it's been like pumping for 10 years now, realistically. 10 years, and they've just released the Venti, and that's kind of its upgrade, but I've used it. It's all right. But it is like, it's the big issue is vaporizers. When they started, they were either really expensive or really not great. Like I remember my first vape, it was the Da Vinci Ascent. It had a tiny thin little glass stem, and it had 4 little holes, and it would just clog all the time, and you'd have to, it sucked.
Constant cleaning.
You know, and it got hot as hell. And there's a few vapes that slowly came along that weren't too bad, but the Mighty Medic, I think it really set the standard for what a vaporizer should be and could be. But fast forward, I loved my Mighty. I still use it daily. Well, not daily anymore, actually. I don't use it nearly as often as I used to. I've now moved on to manual vaporizers.
Okay.
And I've been wanting to show you this one for a little while. So I have a video on the channel. If you haven't seen it, look up the Vestratto Anvil. And what it is it's basically a manual vaporizer that's made of stainless steel. This is wood. This actually doesn't come from the same company. Another company sent this out to me, but it's swappable.
Uh-huh.
So the idea is you can change these, and that's a heat shield. But what it is, you pack this one little cap with your cannabis, very small amount, 0.1 grams. You can get a bowl that's twice the size and one that's half the size as well. The 0.05 is actually a really good microdose for a lot of patients.
Yeah.
But the thing is, 0.1, I would say most patients would regard that as about a cone, right? Like that's how for me, when I'm talking to people, and I talk to patients all day, every day, just due to the brand, I know a lot of them are trying to get off cones, or they just keep going back to cones. And there's two main reasons, I would say. Two real reasons. The first, vaporizers don't hit hard enough, right? They're not quick, they're not instant, and they just do not get the job done. They don't give you that punch, they don't give you that fucking boots. Like that's what the people who have been smoking for 5, 10, 20 years are used to and want, right? That's the feeling that they're used to. That's the biggest reason. The other one is it takes too long. It takes way too long to go through a vape chamber. How long does it take you to go through a Mighty Medic chamber?
It could be 15 minutes. You know.
15, 20 minutes.
Who has 15 minutes?
Who has 15, 20 minutes?
15 minutes? Okay, so I'm so glad you brought this up because I'm one of the few people who speak about it. So there are, different feelings that come from different formulations. And so again, a lot of this is done through education where I talk directly to doctors who may not have used. I mean, doctors are generally really goody two-shoes.
Yeah, they're generally pretty straight and narrow.
Yeah, and some of them,
till the Christmas party.
Yes.
Then you see a doctor.
And then they have a great time. But even when they're studying and stuff, they
They're
may
nerds.
have had a joint, here and there, but it's not really that you've had. Not that I'm saying that the word should ever be bongheads or, potheads or whatever, but they would never even be classified as that. It's not part of the persona. And they're pretty straight people. They follow the rules and they're good at following process as well.
If anything, they're on stimulants, I would assume.
You would
focus,
rather,
right?
exactly, right? It's not something to calm you down. You don't want to, nobody goes into their doctor what's up, G?
It's one of the few professions you really don't want a cannabis, yes, I'm just going to do this surgery today. I'm going to cut your hair and...
Oh, maybe. Oh,
maybe
actually, I don't want to take out that today.
Well, that's looking gross. Oh, that's a bit infected. Nurse, can you deal?
Actually, I'm out. I've got the munchies. No, it doesn't work like that. So they're good people, and so we need to talk about it. So I always say the bong is instant. It's within 5 minutes, you're going to get instant, some sort of I use the word benefit when I really mean effect, okay? And that's because when we talk to patients, we talk about benefit, but it tingles straight away. You feel it almost instantaneously.
Back of the neck,
back
runs
of your
to the
neck,
head.
you feel it down your legs. And it's so important for doctors to know how people feel because they can talk to this feeling that you're going to get if you decide to use it via that route of administration. So that's the, upper tingle. And then when you get a joint, the joint will be next. So it takes maybe about, I think, the 5 to 10 minute mark for the joint to actually really be felt. And I've talked about it with lots of different users, with lots of different rec patients, with industry people, as well as patients themselves. And then a joint, you feel in your legs, you feel it kind of in your body, you're feeling it.
It grounds you a little more.
Yeah, before you feel it in that head, whereas with the bong, and if you're a bong user, that's why nothing ever feels so satisfactory than having that full hit.
Until now.
until we get to see it, right? And then your vaporizer is you have to wait up to 15 minutes to really even begin to feel this mild little floaty, and it picks up slowly. And I think, even for patients to understand that that's the difference that we're actually looking for, it makes a big difference. But then when you look at, smoking is smoking versus vaporizing is we're actually charring. That's why we have something that's left over. We don't, carry a pack of ash with us, but you never know. Some may.
I used to have this little thing that I got. What was it called? It was like a bud pocket or something. It was a little green thing, and you could slip it, and you could put your ciggy or like a butt thing in there, but it was actually like an ashtray. It was like foil sealed, and it was so you could put it out and still smoke it again. And I actually carried that a few times.
There you go.
It was pretty handy.
There you go. But there's a difference, and that was like for me, it's 5, 10, 15 minutes based on the differences.
And it keeps picking up with the vape, right? Like it depends how you go. I think the big thing to look at with a vape, and probably to explain it to a doctor, think of it like taking a cup of tea. You can't scull a cup of tea, right? You just can't
sip on it.
You can't. But a bong, like imagine a bong's more like a shot.
That's exactly the analogy you need to use in life. A bong is like having a shot. You're just chugging it straight away, and the other one is, a slow sip.
And it depends on the vape, obviously, right? So the Mighty Medic or the Mighty Plus, that vaporizer does take a while because it's a conventional one, which is basically the oven is heating. And then there's like the Tiny Mite 2, which came out, which looks very similar to the Airizer Solo mixed with a Mighty.
Yeah.
But what it does, it has the oven heating up, but it also has a convection where it has the bottom. So what it does is it just heats up way quicker. It's still
very
not
quick.
Combusting it, but it punches it much quicker. So you can finish that dose in a couple minutes rather than 20.
Yeah.
But these manual vapes, around this here, there is a copper core. This is made of copper, and you'll see it when I light it. It's just dirty now because I've been lighting it. It kind of chars. There's ways to clean it up with like lemon, but you light it, and you actually light this for about 40 seconds. It sounds ridiculous. It gets hot as hell. It's no joke. But this is the Vestratto Anvil. See the video in the channel. But they've got a product coming out probably about mid-year, which will be an electronic heater, which you slip this into, and then it heats it up in about 15 seconds. And it's just battery powered. There's no flame. And it's going to take Milwaukee drill batteries, which is actually really exciting. So like you can have like hot swap batteries. So you just swap them in and out. And I think at that point, maybe this will be a little closer towards a medical device. I think with the lighter, it looks a little crack pipey. But if you heard that click.
You can see the copper.
Yeah, there's the copper,
Yeah,
right?
totally there.
But you heard that click?
Yeah.
That means it's ready. And there's a second click, which is like you pushed it a little further. I like to go a bit before that one.
Okay.
And now you have a look. Hold on.
Would you chop up in there?
See how much vapor?
That's a lot of vapor.
Right?
That is a lot of vapor. And that's part of the reason why people find it so hard to move away from bong to any kind of vape is because of the volume of expiration. It's like that's the psychology of using that.
Smoke is a judgment for dose almost.
It's literally like, how do you want it? Do you want an instant message? Like instant? Or do you want a letter?
That's it.
Do you want an email? An instant message, an email, or a letter?
Yeah.
And if you need to get somewhere quick or, you just, in terms of you get somewhere quick, I mean, if you need that benefit, quick. If you need that relief, quick. You're gonna, if you've been a long
Bro,
time.
you stressing, you hit the bomb.
You
That's what
generally
happens.
go, and then you feel it in your shoulders, and you're like, I'm ready to like, chill out, as opposed to, it's like almost like an artistic, it's like having a cheese board when you're having a vaporizer.
Yeah.
You got to take a little bit, you got to kind of, wait until it heats up. You've got to slowly smoke it, but the flavors are something that, I think a lot of people, if they've done cannabis and then they start, and especially with the Mighty, and we've seen this with many patients who then come back and share, and
How it tastes.
and they're beautiful about sharing what their experience. They actually want to, and it's so much learning to be done from the communication that comes from consultations, and patients lead the way, and that is also something that is so special because most healthcare professionals do not, like, they're interacting with people all the time. They don't have the luxury of doing this often. If some of them may not do it at all, and no judgment whichever way people decide to go. But when you really kind of, understand how they feel from that moment and how quickly they want to achieve things, and when they taste like that taste factor for me and for you is so different. For the third person or the fourth person will be completely different. And it becomes like also an affiliation. So, you know, like if somebody was to bring me something like a White Widow, and I don't ever like to, I don't like to bash on people, or I don't like to bash on strains, but Lord help me, if somebody was to bring me a White Widow and you literally open up that bottle and you smell, and it just smells like grass, like I would not even be inclined to even go further, because that grassy taste to me is so unattractive. But again, that would happen to be, you know, there's a science behind all of that. That science is really special. And then that science is, you know, with learning about terpenes and how that connects to people. Again, it's like almost like a chemical attraction to the plant and to nature. And I feel like that's why I'm so drawn to it, because when you start understanding the science behind it and why it's so individualized and why it has the capability to not only treat, you know, people with, you know, depression, at the same time they'll help sleep, at the same time they'll help pain, at the same time, you know, the mood and movement and functionality all increase. Like what has this? Like we don't have this in a lab. We can't create, like, even if you look at a dispensary, and if you're a pharmacist and you would resonate with this, there's like the maximum amount of drugs that you have even in combination is 2, sometimes 3. And a lot of times you see this in mixes with like, geriatric drugs, or, you know, like a Panadol and a Nurofen, you know, so that it's like.
Yeah, like the codeine plus
something, right?
Yeah.
There's always 2 or 3.
Yeah.
There's never like 650. And if you get one plus another one plus that third one, you're going to have a really like different experience. But then if you're more, have a better affinity to like the third or the fourth one, you have a completely different experience. Like it's not.
Yeah, you can't really track it unless you track the feeling, right? Yeah. Like it has to be personalized.
That's right.
It has to go, like you can't science terpenes.
No.
Like you can analyze, but I don't think you can kind of go, this is absolutely what's going to happen if you have this.
And that's why taste is such an important, like it's so personalized, right? So taste is one thing that draws people. Smell is one thing that draws people. Mm-hmm. And we actually don't really talk about it. But even when you think about flavonoids and stuff that have the particular pigments, like
that orange cake is what we're having.
Yeah. Well,
and it smells buttery, right?
Yeah.
It has like that. It has that orange citrus. The orange is obvious.
The orange.
But everyone's like, what's cake? And then when you kind of dig it in, and it has this butteriness that is almost like a baked butter. And
can I see that?
That's it. If you don't know how to sniff your buds, by the way, you got to squeeze them. You give them a little squeeze and a press so you get the oils to like pop.
Just pop a little bit.
But the smell experience, like it goes back to your childhood memories. It goes to, your memories associated with smells and things that make you happy. See, me being ethnic, I grew up on lemons, right? Like, can you relate to this?
No, but my husband's the same, and he comes from that region, so definitely I understand.
Right? I grew up on lemons. Fucking citrus was in everything. You ate salad with every meal. You had soup, you'd have salad. But what was that salad? There was some lettuce, some tomato, some cucumber, and lemon. Lemon on everything, right? Some olive oil, sure, but lemon in everything. And like, I love citrus. I really do. Yep. So like, for me, it was really interesting when I started learning and researching about cannabis. I was looking at it. I researched cannabis for probably about a year before I consumed it, when I was about 19. Yeah. Like, I'm a nerd. I was definitely like a kid that played a lot of World of Warcraft. I didn't have cool friends. My gateway drug was probably a shisha. Like, me and the boys smashed shisha for years. Like, we had it through high school. We went to the park after school. It was just a whole phase. But that was my gateway. So I learned about cannabis for about a year before I really consumed it. And what really got me interested was the idea that cannabis doesn't make you slow. I heard about something called sativa, and I was like, what the fuck is a sativa?
Yeah. And
I was like, oh, it could be energetic. And at the time, I was like, why am I like, I found it very hard to do things when I was a kid. Like, just to actually motivate myself to do something, fucking impossible, unless I had pure interest. If it was something I had pure interest, I couldn't stop doing it. And that's all I would just fixate, right? Yep. It was, I'm obsessed with this, then I'm obsessed with this, then this, then this. Then I was looking at I had some stimulants at uni, and stimulants I was like, oh shit, this stuff does make me focus. It works.
This stuff works.
But I didn't like who I was on stimulants. I was a little aggressive, a little agitated, right?
Stimulated,
as you'd say. And then I started doing the research on cannabis, and then cannabis sativa comes along, and you're like, okay. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then I learned a little bit about terpenes, and I understood that lemony things were associated with sativas typically. Yes. Not always, but a lot of limonene is in the sativas. And then I was like, okay, I really want to try and find that. But I'm in fucking Australia. How do I find it? Never did. But I eventually found decent weed, and I actually found like that was my journey of why I found cannabis. I was just trying to self-medicate, and I didn't know why. It was just like, why is it so easy for everyone else to do shit, but not me? I found that such a challenge as a child, such a challenge throughout school and everything, unless I had an interest, obviously.
Yep.
So once I did, I started actually being pretty capable, especially once the acceptance with it came, right? Once I had the acceptance, it was easy to start like going, oh, okay, I am a capable individual. I have something to offer to the world.
Yep.
And I actually know a lot because I fixate on things. So I know things very deeply and intimately.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, okay, how do I now utilize that? Once I started actually medicating throughout the day and I understood how to treat myself, I didn't really know till I got onto the medicinal. That changed another level. That came, but it's those early years where it's like, why did I keep coming back to this fucking drug? I didn't feel like I was inherently a drug addict. It was originally the weekend. We're doing it with friends. It's all that. And then I just wanted it throughout the week. My body was craving it, right? And I noticed the more I smoked, the better my life got. It sounds absurd, but the more I've smoked, the better my life has gotten.
Such a good thing that you've said.
It's absurd. But till last year, I didn't smoke daily necessarily. Yeah. Even
wow.
You know, like it was a lot lighter, and then I just started actually understanding how to titrate myself and actually mixing it in with my CBD, understanding my treatment, my doses, my triggers, and then also this little device because quick, fast, instant.
Get what I need to get.
Little medicated now.
Nobody saw that.
That's a big hit.
Look, you've touched on such important overall topics. First of all, I think thousands, millions of people would resonate with, I was never, like everything was hard and then I couldn't do these things and I always wondered why this is. I wondered why my life was always better when I did do it. I always come back, like significant things that we talk about as to why a medical and a recreational patient are but one, right? Are they truly recreational? Are they truly medical? Like, how do you judge what is what? Is it per
just
grammage?
Trying to enjoy
use?
Life, man.
and this is why I come back to why cannabis is so much better than alcohol as a choice, but yet one is accepted and one is not. Like, it's not accepted for us to go, I just came home, let me pour a glass of wine versus, let me just roll a blunt. Like, and maybe not a blunt, maybe a joint. But
man,
anyway.
I wish.
I come from Cali. That just came right from, the ancient heritages. Again, not that I did it, but I don't even know how to roll a joint, just so you know, like even today. Like
I believe
paper,
that.
Right? But what I would say is that people have this natural affinity, this consistent natural coming back to why did I have all these opioids, plus then I got depressed because I started on those opioids. That depression led me to be less functional, less movement, less work, and then I'm in this space where I'm driven by my medication and having to be medicated, and so many other parts of my life don't work out. And we see this all day, every day in general practice. And, those are the people who generally spend most of their time going to a specialist trying to figure this one out. Then they get put on a new drug, and then we're trying to manage this new drug within their systems. And then all of a sudden they, maybe they did it a long time ago, but ideally now they're, in their mid to, late 30s, and they just felt better from a night out with somebody. Again, a sharing of a community. I did something together with somebody. Is it the connection from that moment? But I did feel better. I slept better. My pain was less. I felt, totally, driven by I felt. But in those moments, them coming back to the plant for me highlights that there's something natural to it. And then, obviously other statistics, like there are 0 global deaths associated with smoking too much cannabis. To me, 0 global deaths. Like, this is huge. We know about, data and numbers with
any other drug. It doesn't matter. Just have a list. Just pick any. Just pick.
There is always that, and especially after COVID, like all of a sudden there was an acceptable death level. Again, I'm not going to go into any conspiracy theories because that's not what we should talk about. I'm definitely pro-vaccines as a pharmacist, but we become very confident with data and understanding scientific data after COVID in a general sense, enough for us to be able to make decisions. And I think that that's also what's driven the growth factor of this entire medical sector, because people became really conscious at that time about what I'm putting into my body. What am I doing? Like if I'm sanitizing 50,000 times a day, like how am I, actually looking after my body? And obviously the big conversations about vaccines in total and stuff like that. And then people decided, okay, well, I know I want to go to something a little bit more natural. And, in 2020, I had vast number of conversations with patients about this. I was, helping doctors deal with patients who actually, really were averse to taking medication. And averse is, I have maybe had, an SSRI or something that led to suicidality a long time ago. I don't want to ever go back down that road, like really big, heavy things that have happened to people because of medication. And now they live and choose natural lives. But even in that natural choice, sometimes you still need help. And the benefits, and again, you brought up something really spectacular, because people who use a lot of THC, like, yeah, we all understand what comes with that, okay? That, edge off, help to cope in that moment, help to, maybe push things a little bit back so it becomes a little bit easier to digest, the current situation, or it's all about a coping mechanism, whether it's the pain, whether it's, something else that's happening. But CBD is by far the best and most revolutionary tool that anyone can have in terms of their medicine cabinet. And I'm not talking about a doctor or a specialist. I'm talking about a human being, to the point where I'm like, why is there fluoride in the water when I should rather have CBD in my water? Like for everybody, there's something about CBD that when you add it to an actual regimen, the potentiality of you as a person for your functionality changes significantly. And that to me is, I've seen it in leaps and bounds. And I've been the person who, in industry have very much so driven the reduction of stigma by increasing, having conversations about being open about excess grammage in this country.
CBD should just be not even measured. It's just take a mill. Like,
so I'm there for THC. Like, I kid you not, I am there for THC. But the moment I have had the privilege, and I say it with those words because it's heavy, the privilege of working hand in hand with a patient and then going, okay, now add this CBD in here, whether it's, in combination with an oil or a flower or a CBD vape, like, the world changes. And, I have had people with allergies. I've had people with inflammation in their stomach. I've had, women with, like endometriosis. Like, these are big, really strong kind of conditions that really affect people's quality of life. And it's that addition of CBD. The THC was still already working, but you got your best friend in the mix.
Yeah. And
your best friend comes with a couple of extra good friends. Like, it's a good time. And that's the entourage benefit, right? Of working CBD and THC. Ideally, scientifically, both the receptor pathways load. And so you get benefit from one pathway to another pathway in synergism. So in totality, what that really means, I know I'm speaking really big words here for everybody, but it just means that every clinical outcome that I'm looking for is just compounded. And it's because you've got a whole bunch of good times happening inside your body. And that's actually resonating. But without CBD, you don't actually get that. And I think the other thing too is in the recreational space, people are Well, yes, because we breed it out because it balances and it stops you from having such a good high. So there is truth in that. But CBD, when you put it together and you start bringing it, what it does for the THC is it actually activates it to work better itself. And in the recreational space, we had a lot of natural tea breaks. So people who came from like smoking 20 years ago and who smoked for 20 years had a solid regimen of 2 months or out of a year, whether they spent it like 2 weeks.
Yeah, before it got to hydro, you lived by the seasons.
You did. And so people had to have breaks. And remember, you pretty much did that around your local area. You never went far away and did that again. Like, you're not going overseas and you're doing it. So even, during just before COVID, there was a lot of travel. People always had the option of having some sort of tea break. And then after COVID, we were stuck here, and a lot of people choose now to go camping. And like camping like really took off, and you're in your natural location. You're not encouraged to take that tea break, which means, again, you're not doing what's needed, and the CBD can assist at that point. It's obviously not as good as having a tea break, but it definitely does assist. And if you add it, that's where the potential is. So
on the patients that come from the recreational side, a lot are actually quite apprehensive to CBD, which is interesting. A lot are like, it doesn't do anything, I don't feel anything, and I have to always say you need to titrate for about 5 weeks at least before you really start to notice the compounding effect of CBD. And the way to notice CBD is when you don't take it. It's really, really funny. A lot of people don't understand. Take it for 5 weeks. Don't take it for a day or two, and just see how you're feeling at that point. That will let you see how your mind has calmed down. And something that I find with people who don't take a lot of CBD or just ignore it completely, quite aggressive. I think when you're punching very high THC, there's a little bit of a delusion that comes into the brain that starts to kind of get people a little aggressive about their own ideas. That's what I experience, at least. On Instagram, I get the people who flame me the most are literally the ones that tell me they're like smashing like 2 grams a day, of straight flower, 3 grams. And it's like, you can tell who that kind of person is. It's really interesting. I can tell just how people communicate what kind of patient they are.
Yeah.
Because like I talk to patients and I ask because a lot of patients will ask me, what flowers do you recommend? And I'm like, well, what are you treating? It's absurd. Like, because people are just thinking, what's the good shit? And I'm like, it really, 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 really depends.
Yeah, it really depends.
And it's so hard to say. I can list off 100 things that I like, but I can tell you what I would think that's good for, but it might not be good for you either. And that's something I think the doctors might not necessarily understand.
I have commentary about that.
Right? Like that's what I was going to say. Like, how do you feel about like the doctor and the pharmacist relationship to the patient in regards to product selection? Because it is so very subjective. And some would argue, it should be the one product for the one ailment, and that patient should stick to it. Maybe there's a daytime and a nighttime. But other than that, some doctors I notice just really struggle with that, where others are like, no, all flowers cool. You find what works best for you and we'll work with that.
Great. So there's 2 parts to that question. One part is just exactly what you said. We don't have the data that goes for this specific condition of the 550 on the market, and the next 250 that are going to be added, in the next 2 months. This one at this dose with this much of frequency in dosing, meaning 1 times a day, 2 times a day, 3 times a day, 4 times a day, etc., is what's going to work best for depression. I have an understanding for that, and I say this to doctors at the same time. I say, just remember that, 1, we don't have that data to connect, but in general, all of the flowers have really been working, right? So keep it simple. Like, why are we going to complex an entire situation to make it specific to that? And I understand that's healthcare. Like, I'm not demeaning healthcare. We need healthcare. We need clinical trials. We need all of that. But in general, people coming from the black market who go and pick up in a Ziploc baggie with no expiry date, no label, no warning, no dosage instruction.
Granted, it's probably fresher.
No batch, no strain information, no terpene information, definitely not grown outdoors or, in a greenhouse, possibly grown indoors illegally, have still found benefit and continue to come back and have found improvements in their life. So for a time where we don't have the clinical data to drive that, and lots of people in the back end want that and we need that. But again, there's a whole compounded part of why that doesn't exist, including of we can't really patent a product that comes from nature. So for everybody who's going to have to invest in a minimum investment just to start a clinical trial, you're looking at hundreds of thousands, close to $500,000 for something that doesn't benefit you, will only benefit humanity. Who's doing that? It's not happening. And so there are a lot of research studies, but they're very, very slow. So that's one part of it, is that we just don't have it. So I don't think that we need to complex it. And I think we're still in a stage where we get to very wholeheartedly experiment with what makes you feel good. So the true essence of what cannabis is, and you lead that treatment, which again is also another hard conversation, because healthcare is us telling you what to do when you are sick, not when you're feeling good or when you want to feel better. It's generally sick care. And we tell you 1 time a day, 2 times a day, no more than 8 in a day or else, right? So all of this has been delivered to us in a specific way. So we just don't have that right now. I think still keep it simple. The second component to that is prescribing. You've got maybe 6 different types of cholesterol medication, or 10 different types of diabetic medication. In 4 years, we have 450 to maybe 700 different SKUs of cannabis. And guess what? This strain has this terpene, has this percentage. Sorry, my voice changes to funny little effects when I need to. Quite the entertainer. And then, you've got all these other little bits and pieces. Oh, it could be taken 0.1 gram 1 time a day for you, but it really could be taken 6 times a day for this guy. It really could be 1 time in a joint for this girl, and another time, in a cream for this one. Again, so there's so much variation. So doctors have to be a little bit specific, because otherwise then we only need cannabis dispensaries, sole cannabis dispensaries with only 500 products for somebody to come and choose 1 at a time. This is not how it works. And then even ordering for pharmacists, and I speak on behalf of all the pharmacists who get bashed literally, verbally, and with their eyes every day by angry patients. And again, we say this like angry patients, but I understand the patient. I really understand the patient. Like, I understand the psychology of a patient going somewhere before and picking up a baggie and going home. Like, I know I walked out, I got it, good or bad, I got it, right? You're coming in. First of all, the pharmacist is like, I've never seen this before. I have to order it. I have to start up an account. And you're like, I don't really care. Just give me my baggie worth, and I want to get out of here. And again, you're not paying for a baggie worth. You're possibly paying for, a bottle's worth, which is, again, maybe 3 times what you may have originally spent. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of I've been through a lot just to be able to get this prescription. I had to pay out of my pocket just to get a doctor to have a conversation with me. And my doctor's been telling me for 5 years, I'm not going to do it for you. Go to the street, etc. So you have all of this pent up kind of frustration as well as anxiety to obtain your medication. You come to a pharmacist and they're like, orange cake or, herb? Is it herb or herb?
Oh, that's
or
the pave?
Pave? Or is it, where does it say pave? Who covered the label? Just those kind of conversations that make you feel less confident. but they have 500 SKUs, maybe up to 700, like literally, that are truly available, with every week something going in and out of stock. Every week somebody deciding that something is going to be discontinued. Like the discontinuation list and the launch lists are equivalent, where you're looking at 20 discontinuations for this week and 27 new products to launch next week from 6 or 7 different suppliers or people who bring it in, sponsors. How do you manage that? That's a massive operation, and we are technically legally not allowed to stock extra stock in the pharmacy. Like that's a legal requirement. So we're bound by so many different processes. We're bound by, the prescription process, the regulation process, the health department process, the controlled drug process. Also, what is this? What do I sell it with? You know more about it than we know about it, and we're the medication experts. So sometimes there has to be conversations that go on with the doctors that then go, I'm going to prescribe this because I know that this pharmacy is going to be able to get it for 25 patients this week without a worry, as opposed to I have to wait 3 weeks because I had to start up an account. I had to open up an account. I had to fill in all the paperwork. I then had to get the paperwork from the doctor. I had to get the paperwork from TGA. I had to get the prescription. I had to then order it. I had to pay for it, all with not a single dollar in their pocket. And then finally, when you come and you pick up at that point, they also don't know sometimes, and I'm not talking about everybody, but when it's the first few times the interaction is there, it's like limited education. And so the patient always then feels a little bit, I think maybe deflated by that whole process. But it's getting much better. And obviously we have the creation and the dawn of clinics, and one that was with the rise of COVID. So we had telehealth. It was this wonderful combustion of everything that could possibly have happened that propelled it. And the clinics just focused on the patient journey, making it seamless. Okay, let's get the ability for you to have this delivered to your door. But funny enough, there are many that love it, but there are also many that still hate it, because there's a part of the psychology of the pickup.
I like the pickup.
It's like
I love my pickup.
They love it.
I love my pickup. Because I'm a bulk pickup patient, right? Because I'll pick up probably every 6 weeks, and I'll pick up 8 tubs.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, probably about there. Maybe a little less, maybe more, but about 8 tubs. Man, that's a good day. You're getting it all. You go in and then you have a chat. You have a good conversation. Oh, there's my meds. I get to go home. Oh my Lord. Look at this beautiful, beautiful arrangement of flowers. Like
the best.
It made me understand why people love flowers. I was like, oh, of course. It all makes sense now. No, there's a lot to that. I think a lot of the regular patients, they only see that one point of contact. They don't see the 30 other things that had to happen.
No.
From the point of before the appointment.
That's right.
They don't see that. And a lot of patients just get a little frustrated when they can't get a particular product because their mate got that product, but their pharmacy doesn't stock it, or their doctor doesn't know about the product. And I think the battle for the medicinal industry with cannabis is they've come into the culture. And the problem is the culture is the culture. The culture isn't going to go away. Culture, you can't wipe out a culture. You can try. There's places in the world that are trying real fucking hard, but you cannot get rid of a culture. I'm sorry. But fundamentally, the culture is now here.
Yeah.
And some pharmacies, maybe they're just actually part of the culture, and some of the pharmacists are actually pretty cool. I've met a few.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, and this is no shade on them, but they're pretty straighty 180s. Generally speaking.
The majority of them.
Even though they work in drugs, they're pretty straight. Pretty straight and narrow.
You want working with drugs, right?
You'd hope so.
Otherwise, pharmacy would be a really different.
Well, no, but here's the argument. Think about how, I forgot his name, the guy who invented MDMA. Richard something? Stallman? No, yeah, maybe Richard Stallman? Could be wrong. But the dude literally just sat in his front yard, sparing with different fucking isotopes, having it himself, and then reporting on what they did. If you didn't have some whacked out chemist doing that, right, you would never have discovered like 600 something compounds.
That's right.
And what they do. Someone has to do it.
The greatest of inventions come from need, right?
Or just curiosity, to be honest with you.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
But, you know, a lot of patients just don't see this side. They don't understand all of it involved. And it's not their fault.
No.
But it's also weirdly not the clinic's fault, nor is it the supplier's fault. It's actually kind of comes back to the TGA and the marketing regulations, because they're treating cannabis as a very traditional medicine. Like, what are the advertising guidelines in Australia regarding marketing of medical services and medicines, right? Like, because we're all seeing the ads that are coming up for 20 different clinics on our social feeds every day, especially if you're in the industry, because you'll click them all and have a little read. You're going to then see the next 10 clinics. You're like, oh, that's a new clinic. Oh, that's a new clinic.
Actually, that was
that's
really
a new
good
one.
targeted ad.
Yeah, that's not bad. I might think about that, you know? It's actually pretty crazy when you see how many clinics have popped up, and some of them are product aligned with a product supply because they believe in the ideas of integrating their product into their pharmacy model and into the clinic model. Some would argue it's not ethical. It's not fair on the patient to be locked into what a doctor could potentially be affiliated with. Like, I think there's some very questionable things there.
Yep.
But my big question is, the TGA's got their regulations. Do you see any of that relaxing anytime soon, changing? Something I feel has to sort of swap. Whether it's, I can't see us ever going to like a California dispensary model anytime soon, but I've seen cannabis-specific pharmacies opening up. It's getting kind of weird in that sense. Mm-hmm. But at what point does this become marketing and not? You know, like, is it education? Because the patient should understand these processes and systems, because by them not understanding all of this, they're very lost. Like, they're lost. Like, they don't know how to communicate to their doctor, to their pharmacist, to whoever's going to support them. I think that's the big issue.
And it's because we still live in a world filled with stigma based on cannabis use, that we can't feel good, because if you're feeling good and it's something that's helping you feel good, then obviously you're an addict.
What about coffee?
Well, yeah, but it's like alcohol, it's accepted. But then smoking, again, you know, not accepted. Again, that was because of lung cancer, very different. But, you know, it's still in the space of what we've seen in our lifetimes occur and how those changes have rapidly occurred. With TGA, and I mean, I come and I speak from a pharmacist's perspective, and I understand this, is that we can't do that with drugs in Australia because that's the red tape that occurs, or the legislative or the regulations that occur with medications. This is not yet a legalized recreational adult use market. It is legalized specifically for medicational purposes. Therefore, it has to have a role and a specificity and a dose and all of those things associated with it. But we're not necessarily living like we do in America, where it's like, oh, have you tried Ozempic? Please talk to your doctor. You know, like, you know, side effects may occur. You may die from this. Like, they have these advertisements with those things in it. We are not allowed to do that. We are not even really allowed to do that even properly with Nurofen. That's why you know, there's specific levels of medication that can actually be advertised. What's happened with medical cannabis is the service for medical cannabis has definitely been advertised in the market. But that advertisement tends to seem like enticement, because you're not getting websites that, and I'm not in favor of this, but it's just to make the understanding and the conversation, right? You're not getting, websites that tell you, so when you want an opioid, this is what's going to happen. You go to your doctor. You talk to your doctor. From there, the doctor applies to the government. The government then says yes. Then you take the prescription to the pharmacy. Oh, we just mail it to your home. Those things haven't been done. This was done, and again, it was born out of a time for necessity and need, because we lived in that COVID bubble. And we in Australia lived in a bubble. So all of these things had the time to brew, to fester, and those who did it early on one, because there was never that. So what's actually happened is, because it, to me, was like almost like birth, and it literally started walking and crawling and talking and doing all these major functionings. Like, we're just talking, you know, about the industry as a whole. That occurred, you know, when we were all in lockdowns and things like that. So everything was different, and then telehealth blew up. So it's hard then even for people to know where things were, because everybody was then pushed towards the internet. So there was an acceptance, like it was easier. We were allowed digital prescriptions. So your doctor could actually just email a prescription to a pharmacy, and the pharmacy never needed to see the paperwork. As long as it came from the doctor's email, that was accepted. That's no longer accepted. So all the kind of things that we built the industry on early on doesn't actually exist anymore. So we're back to traditional healthcare. And what you're trying to do is, you've had a drug and a launch or an emergence of a new class of medication, and that new class of medication almost didn't filter or fall into healthcare. It's kind of filtered into this new age digital zone. That's also not okay. But if you go to any digital health tech, you see all this AI technology that's starting to come up. So obviously technology is right there in the forefront, but this one medication still has its legs or its roots in the medication space. Only when we come to legalization for adult or recreational use will we see a lot of laxing, but we also need to preserve the medical space, because we have proven now, and not just here in Australia, I mean, we still have a smaller market in total, like in numbers, but because it's concentrated and it's going to grow the most rapidly, we have, you know, a very successful, viable market. But we've seen in other places where when you just instantly remove and put in recreation, we actually crash the medical market, and we don't further the education, we don't further the research. So all of that initial investment, like people's mortgages, you know, double mortgages, people's hard, you know, sweat and blood and tears to create these systems and these processes literally just fall apart. So, you know, there's two pieces of this. We are dealing with a medication. I still have the concept of keep it simple, like it's working. I don't need you to, you know, have to give me a dose specific. I think I'm big enough to be able to do that on my own. But there are some people, again, who need restrictions and limitations, and we do need to know maximum.
Plus also new people, right?
Yeah, we still have to guide. Like, we need guided care for a drug. And that's why even when you see now MDMA therapy and psilocybin therapies that are starting to slowly come about, they're all guided. Like, there's not a, here, have some and go home. But cannabis can be allowed to do that. And we are sending it to your home. And again, that is based on the safety element of this drug. We've had 0 global deaths ever associated with cannabis. And the reason for that and the science behind it is because your therapeutic level that you can find can be very, very low. But your toxic loading doses, or those that would be, you know, fatal doses, are excessively high. So you've got this huge window. And most of the time you'll green out.
Yeah, you just...
Before you even hit that part.
The amount of cannabis required to be... The only way you can die from cannabis is by having it fall on you, fundamentally. Like a heavy amount of cannabis just dropped on you. That's the only way. That's the only way you'll get killed by weed.
That might be a choice for some.
That's
just
the dose.
I want to lay in a bed of weed forever.
Suffocate in weed. Could be a way. Could be a way.
But, you know, like that's what I mean. Like there's a lot of different elements, a lot of different pieces to all of this. And because it sits in a medical space, the thing is that we have a lot of recreational users that are very comfortable. So that's why the conversation about why is it just not legalized, etc., occurs. But because it's also coming through a pharmacy end, you've got a responsibility to look after people. Mm-hmm. Like you have a duty of care. And that responsibility is heavy because it comes with legislation, it comes with regulation, it then comes with, you know, drug control. It doesn't come easy. It's not just a label. You know, so I've had lots of people, you know, you just stick on a label, or, you know, a monkey can do that job.
It's really the conversation, isn't it?
It's all about understanding what the processes are.
It's tricky because how is old Greg, who's 40 and been smoking since he was 20, going to listen to a pharmacist who's never taken a hit in their life? You know, like, oh, you're going to tell me how to medicate. But the problem, like, I actually see full value in the medicinal market because I've experienced it myself. Like, once I understood how to dose, how to integrate the CBD, like putting that all together with a really good doctor, that was a great experience. That really helped improve my quality of life. Call me a drug addict now that functions better? Sure. Call me just a functioning human? Sure. Doesn't really matter to me.
High functioning cannabis user.
That's it. But what I think one of the issues as well that exists though, you've got all these clinics that have popped up and a lot of them are doing 5-10 minute consults. They'll call it a 15, but it could be 5-10 minutes. And they're just pretty much giving them a script for cannabis and just going, go on, go get it. No real guidance other than like, okay, you've used cannabis before and you're using it to treat this. Okay, here's a day and a night flower, whatever it happens to be, maybe an oil. But what I think the biggest value in the medicinal market, it is that conversation. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, because this isn't because this is a specialist care, like these doctors, they're not cannabis doctors, they're just doctors that have now chosen to specialize in cannabis effectively.
Only give out cannabis scripts, yep.
Right. So patients don't necessarily want to spend an hour or even 30 minutes with a doctor talking about all their ailments when they just want their weed, right? And because they know how to get it, they know it works and all this. But there's so much value in that conversation where you spend that little bit of extra money, get a really good doctor that understands the plant better, and you get it. But my issue is you've got, I don't know how many patients are in Australia. What do you think? 500,000 to 1 million, right? Somewhere in that range. I don't think a lot of these patients have actually had a doctor that really understands cannabis. I think a lot of the people in this country that have gotten onto the medicinal have gotten a tick and flick script doctor that are just giving them cannabis. This is my issue with the industry. I am all for the medicinal side, but I actually would like it to be that. But I don't know how that's going to happen.
Okay, so great topic of conversation. How about we do it like America, okay? Let's flip the switch.
I've always considered this.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The bud tender appeal. Mm-hmm. So I have a 21-year-old who is an epileptic who comes with a script for, medication. Literally in America, it is tick and flick. Mm-hmm. So you get access to a card. That card allows you access to a particular usage, like grammage usage or number of plants that you're allowed to grow. You get access to a card. From that card, you can go to any dispensary, and you have a 19 or like maybe a 20-year-old knows nothing in general about your epilepsy, does not know how to manage your epileptic medication, but is telling you what live rosin to be puffing on, which is 98%, and it's a different feel.
Yeah.
And if you've
That's not right either.
Yeah, exactly. So access comes hand in hand. I think there are some incredible, and I have had the luxury of speaking to hundreds, and I kid you not, hundreds of prescribers throughout Australia for their first touch point. Some doctors over my time, it's literally been 500 doctors that I've had the luxury of speaking to. And these are incredible humans that are taking the first leap. Remember, we're still in the dawn of an era. We're still, sitting where they're in a room and 5 other people are going, are you sure that's really what you want to be doing? Mm-hmm. Are you sure that that's not a person who's going to end up with
Is there
psychosis?
a subject yet for their degrees, like an elective subject to still learn about cannabis? It doesn't exist, does it?
Not in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, like obviously if it's 20 years ago, it was a drug. You're a druggie. 10 years ago, no. I mean, remember, we've, discovered the endocannabinoid system and internal anandamide and stuff from as early as 1991, 1992 with Raphael, can still not say his last name, Melchim. Yep. Amazing human being who, helped to lead to these discoveries. And then it's now 2024. So we've got close to 30 years and it's not in curriculum. We have 2/3 of the world that have now looked at it as medical legalization, and yet we still have so
It's
many.
not in the body.
It's not there, and they're still up against stigma. And so the use pattern now you'd most probably get a couple who are going through uni who maybe do take cannabis through the medical space, and then you're having different types of conversations, or the ones who, you know, were a little bit friendly through uni, like they've, you know, had it maybe more than 1 or 2 times, you know, didn't hinder their studying, they kind of were a little bit more inclined, and then they've come out. Those are also the people who are there, who are doing what we would like to call the tick and flick, or the 5 or 6 minute consults. But as you progress through general practice, your average consult is between 6 and 10 minutes.
It's insane.
Like, you can, because you're conditioned to think along those pathways. Like, you are trained. You're actually an expert in going, you've told me 3 things, and those 3 things I'm able to identify that it's possibly this. If it's this, I need to give you that medication.
Straight flow chart.
It's a A plus B equals C. You know, now I have to give you some lifestyle tips, and you need to go for a walk every day. You know, you need to eat healthy food. You need to lose some weight. You need to stop drinking alcohol. Like, literally the same stuff you'll hear every single time. So if you've had your first 50 patients, you're apprehensive. You have your first 500 patients, you're getting used to the medication. You get your first 1,000 patients, you start going, I'm confident. I need to know from them, what are the first 3 things that they're telling me that I'm going to be like, it's okay, you know? And in general, like, I like to propagate appropriate conversation with doctors when I train them. And I love to train newer doctors as well too. So, you know, coach them along the line. And, you know, follow-up conversations should include, how are you going with the taste? How long have you been on a strain? You know, are you enjoying it? Is it working for you? What have you found are your benefits? Like, if you're not having these conversations, then it's also on you to kind of, you know, find that. But today also, we come from, again, the psychology of us obtaining healthcare. We go swipe a Medicare card. Oh, if we have to pay $20 gap fee, like, what? This country, like, I pay 40% of my tax, blah, 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 blah. You know, like, I'm angry. But what is $80? Like, we go to spas for $450 and we're happy to give it to the Thai girl who rubbed us up and down for an hour. But we don't want to.
I won't pay for the dude that went to school for like 8 years and then 12 years before he got any money.
Yeah, not the guy who saw, you know, already 10,000 patients in Australia.
Australia has a really weird privilege issue with healthcare.
That's
you know,
right.
like, we're very privileged and our expectations are just here.
Yeah.
And they should be. I don't think that's a thing that should be taken away from us at all. Like, I think I don't think
we should be paying gap fees either for, like, general practice. But in saying so, when you get specialists, like,
that's just how it is. There's no Medicare to take care of it. And so something I was going to talk about, where you talked about the medications and trying to map them up to conditions and ideal world. That's great. It's really great. But
I have this impending doom with you, whatever questions coming next.
I just don't think it's true. I'm sorry. I just don't think you'll ever get there. Because, like you said, 20 products get discontinued, 20 get added. Okay, you might get it with strain, but strain matters plenty, sure. But how do I put this? The batch matters more. You know, like, how it was grown. All of that matters so much more. But also, that's not the only factor. If this was just about quality medication, I think maybe you could do it, but it's not. It's about price. Price is a big one. Medications that are cheaper and a little lower quality, but they're cheaper and they still work. But I don't know, like, how do I put this? Some patients believe they should have 25 to 30% stuff because it's the good shit. Mm-hmm. Some believe, no, I'm happy with a 17%. Others, no, I want like a 1-to-1, 8, you know?
Yep.
And everyone's got their little preferences, and you don't know until you know as well. That's one of those things. It takes a while to figure that out. And you need a doctor that's actually accommodating to that. I think that's one of the really tricky things for a doctor to understand. Like, the patient needs to be able to figure that out. I don't think the doctor can do that entirely. No. They can try, but it's so hard, especially over a phone call, like, to gauge I guess, how they use it, what their background is, whether they're first timers, not first timers, like there's so many variables to it. And then you're trying to map, okay, little Josip here, right? Little Joe, he's presenting with a bit of anxiety, a bit of depression, but he really wants it for ADHD. He's looking to kind of be able to focus and be stimulated through the day, and maybe a bit of a mood lift that helps lift up the depression cloud. Cool, right? Okay, it looks like some things with limonene are great. Looks like some things with terpinolene are good, right? I'm a big terpinolene guy. Once I discovered that, I was like, lovely, right? That's good. These are the products that are there. What do I give him? Okay, I give him that. Oh, shit, he gets it, he's complaining. It smells like shit. It actually has no smell. That's actually more likely. If it smells like shit, I'm probably into it, Like,
is that skunky enough for
the
you?
skunkier, the stankier, it's good shit. But, it might have no terpenes. And I'm like, crap product, I want a new script. And then it's the frustration of back and forth with the clinic or the doctor or whoever to try and get you something better. But then you get the next thing. Fuck, that just put me to sleep.
Yeah.
Didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. Now, here's the kicker. Me, the patient, I only know I can get these products because I see them on Reddit, Facebook, Canna Reviews, Catalyst, maybe there's a few other places, people reviewing them. Now, I, as a patient, can look at those ideas, but I don't know what's a genuine review because there's so many companies, right? There's so many people putting up reviews of things, and you're just like, you don't know what's what because you'll try something and they're like, it's great, it's great, it's great. You get it. It's not great.
Not great.
Not always. So sometimes photos are really nice. Not always. Sometimes I like looking at buds and that gives me a good indication of what the quality is like.
True.
But it doesn't tell me what the effect's like because, see, I sit in a weird category. I like flowers from fucking 0% THC, CBD flower.
Yeah.
Love it. All the way up to 30, 32% sort of stuff. Fucking no questions. I love my 17%. I find those sativas are great, but it's frustrating as shit when you're a patient and you're like, $120 for 17%, 10 grams, or $130 for 25%, 10 grams. That's going to last me probably longer than that, but that is probably the better medication.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I get into, I don't think the doctors and the pharmacists, maybe the pharmacist can, if something gets loosened, can solve this issue without a bit of flexibility. There needs to be some level of flexibility where the patient is empowered, but also the patient needs to be able to kind of be encouraged to go on that journey. I think they need to be educated by the pharmacist more than likely on how to help find what's going to work for them. That needs to happen. But I don't know where that sits in terms of marketing and advertising.
Exactly. And this is why we're limited, because the education now is kind of being perceived as inciting. And where that is, and the hand is limited on education, then I think we have a very very unfair situation. What I do want to say though is THC and okay, let's go all the way back to when you first started. You talked about the grow. So I have a couple of little cheesy sayings, and people who know me will laugh at this, but I always say the know is in the grow. Okay? Because if you open up that bottle and you see, and let's just pull, where's the pave? And you look and you see the actual product, like instantaneously you can tell when it's good, how it's done.
You'd be so shook at sometimes no. If it smells good, probably, but some things look great.
And they
for example, actually, the ANTG Rocky. Everyone knows about the Rocky because it caused so many fucking problems in this space because everyone's like, yeah, I want the 30, I want the Rocky, I want the Rocky, I want the Rocky. And it really fell flat.
You ain't OG if you ain't trying to Rocky.
That's it. Or the boss. Or the boss. But
which has just been discontinued.
Oh, good. Filth. It smelled like chlorophyll.
But to me, the no is in the grow. It's like raising a child. Like there is a specific skill set. There are, people are going through degrees now to learn how, and there are ancient skill sets on how to grow appropriately, how to breed the right strain, how, to water it effectively, the light, the air quality, everything, So the no is definitely in the grow. And then the other cheesy saying that I have is, if you know, you know. And I say this to a lot of people in industry who, some of them will laugh when they hear this, but if you know, you know, because THC is not necessarily, when you get a connoisseur, and a connoisseur is somebody who knows their way around weed. And I talk to doctors about this all the time. Like, you have to know what type of patient you're speaking to, right? It's same like when you are treating with opioids, and there are some patients that are quite particular drug seeking rather than condition management. Like, we can tell, we're taught those things. But when we speak to connoisseurs are the ones who are like, I've been doing this for 40 years. Some of them are even less. Some of them, I've been doing this for 10 years. I don't necessarily need a 28%. What I really want is a nice 22. And 22 is a soft, sweet spot. If you're just entering and your doctor is like prescribing you 22% and you've never ever tried cannabis before, chances are you're going to be on your bottom, and even if it's a sativa, you're going to be in the couch, like indica in the couch. It's just because it's THC percentage is there for a reason, but there's no necessity really to have to etch towards it. And as you do continue to use, if you had a 28% and you continue to use it and use it and use it, and over a couple of months, usually I see that tolerance, that strain tolerance occur at around, the 2 to 3 month mark. Is really where you go, I can really tolerate this now. Cause like I've, got one bottle of 10 grams and that's lasted me 2 months because it was 28%. It was new. But I got a really good hit out of it. Tolerance takes a little while, but up until that point, you don't need that much. So 17% is a really great entry point. And it's really functional, and it's really condition management. And even when you look back and you look at combinations where there are like 11-11 or 12-12 or even 6-6, and you've got a bit of CBD and a bit of THC. I mean, these have broken the stigma in market. They also sit very comfortably with doctors who prescribe because you have that CBD in there. You're getting that benefit from it. You're still able to get a little buzz. The buzz is there. You're kind of getting what you want.
Those strains really good for the elderly, like older folk.
Not even that. It's actually good for us every now and then to top up and break up with that, because the coping mechanism when you add in those CBD formulas are fantastic. Like, I really believe they increase the capacity to cope. And remember, our days are very different to 20, 30 years ago. Like, we don't have the luxury of stopping. We continue to scroll. Like, we're never idle. Like old school sayings, an idle mind is the playground of a devil, right? Because you have nothing to do, so you just sit there and you think and think and think. We don't have time to do that anymore. Like, if not, we're scrolling. If we're not scrolling, we're shopping. If we're not shopifying watching something, TV, we're doing. We've always got something to do. There's always a ping. There's always an instant message. Like, there's no downtime for us. So in terms of coping, and that's why, there's a lot of talk about anxiety and pain, and those are the two top tier conditions that we treat, and not just in Australia, but globally. When I see global consensus data for the medical purposes, those are the two conditions. And anxiety is because we don't have any calming mechanisms. We can't even really go. I mean, we go camping and then we're out of range, and that, excuse my language, is fucked. Like, got more anxiety because I couldn't get my pings all day long.
Man. When I go away, I love doing like Airbnbs and things like that out in the wilderness, somewhere like in a cabin. And I take the phone, but I just kind of forget about it. And it's the most freeing thing. Like, I'm just like, fuck off. And then it's like, when you come back after like 2-3 days to look at your phone, or even at night, you just have a quick look. Whoa. There's a lot of emails. Whoa. That's a lot of messages.
I'm gonna chuck that away.
Who's called me? Oh, okay.
I'm dead.
And then you realize that's a normal day.
That's a normal
motherfucking day. Like,
How are we supposed to get through that without a crutch? How? We are not, like, it's less than a generation that has had this switch. Like, you know, like, is a generation 40 years, whereas now we're seeing a generational switch maybe at 10 to 20 years. Like, it's massive.
I read a study that was saying generation swap is actually becoming more like 3 to 5 years because everything's evolving so rapidly. There's like subcultures that are being created with just these little short pockets, and that's becoming generational.
It's absolutely generational. And whereas in past, a generation was considered 40 years, okay? If now it's 3 to 5 years, I mean, if you're in a job for 3 years, hey, high five, you did real good. You gave them your time. You should feel satisfied. I'm like, my husband used to work for Queensland government. He was there for 15 years.
My buddy just quit a job. My buddy just left a job at Bunnings after 15 years. Yeah. It was crazy. I'm like, wow. It took 15 fucking years.
He now has a coffee shop and he left it. But again, it's like, I was like, that should actually be like a quality on your resume.
No, it is.
Loyalty.
Yeah. That's how he got his new job. It was like, I'm planning to be loyal if you're loyal to me, you know, like I've got the proof.
So that, you know, that's what I mean. It's like, we haven't even, I'm born in the 80s. Okay. So I'm old as, maybe don't act it, but I'm old enough to know life without the internet. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on that cusp, right?
You're on the cusp.
I'm a 92 baby, so like I came into internet, but I saw the internet come in. I saw the wave. It's the people that were born it really is like that 2000 mark is good, but I would say 97 to 2000 there, as soon as you hit about that age point, you don't know the world without like
internet. And it's a very, so, you know, even our understanding of traditional maybe values of life, and I'm not talking about family or anything like that. I'm just talking about rest and recuperation and what that meant, you know? Like, I have an 80-year-old grandma who's going to be living with me in a couple of months. And when she used to live with me during COVID, she used to sit with me and she used to go, I feel sorry for you. And then I really felt sorry for myself because I was like, excuse me, you're like 75. Why are you feeling sorry for me? And she was just like I lived with, you know, my in-laws, and I had like, you know, I only needed to cook once a week, and every other days, like, I just hung out with my kids, or I used to read a book a night. I was like, read? I don't have time to read. That's why I scroll. You know what I mean? Like, just little things like that. Like, they actually feel sorry for us because our life is actually so much more busy with every convenience, every app, every ping, every reminder.
Every convenience is inconvenient in the end.
It's the worst, right? Except for diapers, when you think about, you know, just the ability to chuck it away versus having to wash poo out. Just little things like that. Like, we have all of that luxury, yet we have no time. And so that's why I think also we just had a conversation about a mighty taking 15 minutes that we couldn't take out of our day, then to wait for another 15 minutes for it to hit. Come on, that's like,
if I'm using a session vaporizer, I'm working while I'm doing it, like, you know, and that's a lot of people.
What I mean.
One good one I actually had with one of my cannabis nurses was the idea of treat it as a meditation session. And I do that quite often. Mm-hmm. Like, a few of my big things is, before medicating, ask why, right? Yeah. Why are you medicating? So it's like, you're just conscious of your reason. If it's to cope, cool, that's fine. Doesn't matter. You don't hold judgment for your reason. You just want to know why, so you can take note of it. And then the other one is try and treat it as a bit of a meditative practice. Like, sit with your thoughts, sit with your feelings. Or if you're with people, you know, talk about what you're feeling and going through. Like, me and my partner, we sit opposite each other and we're hitting vapes. And then suddenly we've got this like, bang, let's reflect on our lives, hit each other, you know, like, you know, it's just like a mirror, and all of a sudden we're like, all right, let's go do those things tomorrow.
Yeah. And we love, you know, cannabis users love to make lists of things. You know, spoken to many across the lines, like, oh, I always make this list and then I never get it done, and it makes me more upset. And then I get back into it, and, you know, but I think there's still an element of relaxing, letting go. And that's the medical benefit that we try to bring from that. You understand the benefit medically via a recreational use as well. And that's what's really special. You can't necessarily feel that with overuse of Valiums. You can't necessarily feel that with overuse of, sleep aids, you find that the issues occur a lot earlier, even with smoking like cigarettes as well as drinking alcohol. Yet there are people who smoke for 20, and I think this is where like I became such a strong canna believer, and really trying to break the stigma continuously with people, because there are people that I have met who are incredible human beings. And that's what they think is quote unquote their vice, but that's because we're taught to think that you can't have any better. Like they're high functioning, and I'm talking like jobs that we would go, oh, you can't be doing that. But really it is because there is some benefit there. People don't come back naturally even to that black market if there wasn't something that, and obviously arguably some people will say, oh, that's because that's an addiction. But no, it's actually not. It's because people continue to take their medication and they continue to be on this, And what I have seen is in some cases, and I'm not propagating it, but by sheer volume of people that I have helped to get access through cannabis clinics or via doctors who I've trained, like people's lives have actually changed. Like I've seen people reduce off 8 out of 12 medications. I've seen people walk again. I've seen, I had a doctor who told me once, seen patients have flailing arms, and now, has a joint is like completely like normal. Like what is the cannabis actually doing? And, what we see for PTSD patients, what we see for cancer patients, like to me, it's an absolute tool. And you use this word early on in this podcast, and it is a medicine tool. And even when you look historically, it's been in the toolbox. It's only 100 years that has been
illegal. Yeah, it's absurd.
And you can't, and like people just cannot relinquish.
But see, what's frustrating? It's like, oh yeah, but now it's stronger, and I'm like, yeah, so you have to use less,
If it has more terpenes, technically, then you should be using less anyway, because you feel the benefit, and and you're feeling the benefit that you actually want. And remember, a lot of our bong BG users, a lot of our water vape users, a lot of just pipes in general, as well as joints, they tend to spin.
Yeah, and that gets them coming
That's
back.
a whole different, that's a 20-minute top up, mate. 20-minute top up.
Yeah.
And that's where tolerance builds. It's actually because of the crave for that head spin that comes with it. And if you just do green, that's not what's associated. It's actually quite different.
The nicotine and the THC actually have a synthesis that actually makes the THC stronger.
Mm-hmm.
And
you feel it.
You can feel that strength. It's not just the head spin, but it's the actual effect that it makes it last and go further. And I mean, it kind of reigns true, but it causes so many problems because you come back to it. It goes further, but you come back to it all the time.
All the time.
So it's going further, but you're having it more.
Yeah. The whole point is we got to find the safest, most effective way at the lowest doses. And that's safety. That's the safe coaching of uses. And
I think that's probably correct, but I would argue heroic doses have heroic treatments.
No. Yes.
Have you never just taken 100 milligrams of oil and melted into a couch and just been like, the doctor definitely didn't prescribe that, but I wanted to experience like a bit of spirituality tonight.
Oh, I think some people would again, too much THC gives you paranoia, gives you nausea, and you literally feel like my heart is going to pump out of my chest and I'm going to die tonight. And I did this to myself, right?
Yeah, it happens. But then it becomes a spiritual experience. Then you have to reflect on life. Tell me that isn't healthy.
I think that there are healthier...
I can't die.
I think
we've established we can't die, right?
But I think there are healthier ways to reflect in a more meditative way than 100 milligrams.
That's if you go to the paranoia. But if you don't, and you just get into straight consciousness that's living a little outside your perspective. And
but I think you need a bit of skill called tolerance to have that experience. Because
you've been a patient for a few years.
Yeah, that's right? Otherwise, then it's a huge difference. And the other thing to that is, mixing formulations is actually something that I think is really important, and we don't talk about that a lot. But you actually need flour in your therapy or an inhaled oil, you actually need the oil as your long-term benefit. So it's literally like if you're on pain medication, you'd most probably have an endone, you most probably have a Tarjan.
That's your oils.
Your endone is your Tarjan. I mean, your oils are your Tarjan, and your flowers or your inhaled oils are actually like your endone. So they're immediate release. They help, you know, your flower is actually that extra Panadol in the day, your extra Xanax in a day. It really does assist for breakthrough pain, and it's instantaneous. You're going to get, you know, its result within 5, literally between, depending on what you
have you experienced much of the nano emulsions and that sort of stuff? That's some interesting stuff. That's kind of
very novel.
I think that's kind of coming along and could be a very good option for the acute sort of stuff that comes on quickly, because I've had some nano emulsion now and I'm like, oh, within about 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I'm like, okay.
So because it's so novel, again, a lot more expensive. So, you know, a different kind of ball game at the current moment. I still think to me, in terms of therapy, oil, or always an oil, and somewhere along the line, always some CBD plus the flower really is the optimal. Like I just, for the number of patients that I've had the luxury of doing follow-ups with,
your general treatment
my
plan.
general treatment to me is so effective. Yeah. And I know people want to deviate. I know there's a lot of conversation about edibles, and I get this, whether it's patient, whether it's pharmacy, whether it's product companies. You know, we always talk about edibles, and edibles are great, but they're also a bit of a dangerous space because there's always a slight delay. And I mean, it's definitely needed. There's, you know, certain things that we get, metabolites that you only get through an edible as well. So there are places, but I think it's also that choice in terms of a recreational element. It's same like dabs, waxes.
Well, they're around now.
Shatters. I know they're around, but like, you know, in terms of when
I've talked to doctors, they're like, how the hell do you prescribe this? What do you tell them to take these crack rocks with? Like, this is absurd.
This and this is that moment, like, where again in a new, you know, this is what happens at the dawn of an era. Like literally every ray of sunlight that comes up at this moment is that new formulation, that new education piece. Like, I've been calling around the last few weeks to people about, where do we get dab rigs from for shatter? You know, like these are conversations that patients are having. Some of them have used for a very long time. They know how to do it. Guess what? Do you think me and that doctor kind of really knew everything? No, we're going to be open and honest. Like, we're not at that point where we're very comfortable with that. We have to do a lot of research. We have to go back. Like, we need to call people who know what they're doing. And usually that's a great person who, you know, historically has had recreational use that can help to guide us. Because without that, we don't have the element of understanding, because we don't generally do that. Yeah. And, you know, experience is the greatest. Anyway.
Mimi on the weekends isn't hitting dabs.
No, definitely not. You know, it's maybe an oil or a spray, or, you know, I keep telling people, I'm like, let me get some MDI CBD for, you know, like asthma. Because that to me, you know, a metered dose inhaler for CBD for, you know, like asthma and stuff like that, or for allergies, or, you know, something. Again, you know, we've got a long way to go. There should be suppositories for women. There should be, you know, suppositories, again, rectally for people who have pain, you know, cancers. There are people, you know, different types of things that we can invest in that can really help medically. And this is my only greatest fear, is if we don't necessarily look after the medical space, the chances of that occurring doesn't necessarily happen, because people go, oh, well, if you're willing to pay. And my honest opinion, and again, just my opinion, is that when the rec space comes, they're going to tax the F out of every step along the way, which means that in my opinion of how things will work, the medical space will be cheaper. Yeah. And the rec space will be much more expensive. And already we can see the medical space for an ounce is slightly cheaper.
Under $200, bro.
Yeah.
You can get an ounce for like...
For some. Oh. And is that really...
Is that quality? Yeah. But there's some decent products I've seen actually sitting between probably $2 to $2.50. And I'm like, that's pretty fair. Yeah. Under $10 a gram is a really nice price point. Michael Boulderstone from the Legalized Cannabis Party advocates for $1 a gram. That's what it should be. And I'm like, can't really disagree with you.
No, I can't. I for access for patients, I definitely think that that's a good price point. I think also, like, you know, there's a lot of people purchasing product from elsewhere, and unfortunately, not all the product in Australia is ready for what is in competition for what's already been around for like 10, sometimes up to 20 years.
Australian
Like
product. It's getting there.
It's getting there.
Some of it's actually like I've got a few Australian products that I really like.
Yeah.
I really like the Superbly range from Simra. I went to that farm, and like I think when you get to a farm and you get to see it and all that, you connect with the plant, and then when you have it, somehow it hits a little better.
Yeah.
Can't lie. It's maybe it's completely subjective, but
again,
and it's placebo,
yeah.
but it works.
But
it works.
And that's why I wish we had more connection to what's in this box, right? What's in this bottle, who's behind this, because that is the community at heart, and we want to be open. I think we're just not there yet, and I think that should be the next big step is, you know, we're open about what we are doing, where we're getting, what's in these boxes, what's in these bottles. You know, you still get COAs where, you know, some places are testing, you know, 8 terpenes, some places are testing
400.
Yeah, and we want to know, like, if you get an opportunity to know what 400 are, I mean, you're not really going to pinpoint the one that's doing it right for you.
But you're going to get a really big number.
Yeah. And so, you know, again, we become more connected, but it's becoming connected with the science. It's becoming connected with, you know, what is actually behind it, like the horticulture or the agriculture behind it. And that's really special. Like, think of, like, you know, being connected to the whole journey of the plant before it comes to you. I mean, you just talked about the farm and feeling connected to it. I wish that we had a little bit more. And again,
what we want, it's a QR code on the bottle. Scan it, and it shows us the journey of the plant.
But is that advertising? Thank you, TGA. Like, if there's anything that I got a mic drop with, it's like,
well,
like, I think it's education, but it's still, the problem right now is where's the line between education versus enticement?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it is good marketing.
It's
like,
very
you can't
good marketing.
argue a good story. You
can't.
Because you're gonna tell a story. So I think it's one of those tricky spaces that I don't know. I have no solution there. I really don't know how that issue gets solved, because it's unfair for the patient, for the doctor as well, because it causes problems for everyone on that chain. It causes so many things that just shouldn't be problems. And I think that's what causes everything to be more expensive, because people want to be paid for their time. So if you're causing all these hiccups, you're causing like patient access problems. That's where I get a little frustrated with a lot of these regulations. It's more of a hindrance than a preventative. For example, they did the whole GMP thing where they said all buds have to be GMP. Cannabis asked them, have you tested any buds since? And they're like, nah, it's been 8 months.
It's non-testable. It's like a quality stamp, but it doesn't actually have a testing process or a policy.
Yeah, there's nothing's been done. So I just question, it's like, what battles does this regulator pick and choose? Is it subjective? Are they like, do they have a targeted approach? Before Christmas, they went and tried to do a crackdown on the clinic's advertising and using the word plant medicine. This is not plant medicine, guys. This is medicine, actually. It's just medicine. It's just medicine.
And if you write the words plant medicine,
you'll get in trouble. So it seems like they're really trying to make it that it's very hard for patients to actually understand anything going on with these suppliers, anything going on with the doctors and the pharmacies. Like, the patient's just left in the dark, and they have a million questions because of it. So my question is the TGA regulating things so far that they're actually causing harm? And I want to question, is the TGA actually causing harm to patients here?
Well, again, my big fat opinion, and I'm very confident and comfortable to say that I think the new TGA rules, again, does not consider, one, the use patterns of patients of varied levels. again, there's a lot of stigma associated with, oh, if you use too much, then you're just a druggie and you're just an addict. And that whole kind of like blurring of it with, oh no, it's about safety. But then again, enticement, where does education versus enticement? And it's because cannabis has emerged through a time, and I say that very proudly, it's been emerged through a time where it almost like you rolled a dice and the dice fell off the board, and that's healthcare, and this is something new. And again, like, you know, we have other places that deal with other conditions that they highlight, like hair loss, erectile dysfunction. You've got places like Pilot. You've got that advertise that do exactly the same thing.
Because it's a condition.
But you're advertising the condition. So cannabis itself decided, in terms of the historical part of how this space has emerged here, did that with the service, which was the clinics. And that's why the clinics, again, now are under so much scrutiny in terms of advertising. But like, in my very sorted, very passionate opinion, if you get access to a catalog of what else might be there, how else are you supposed to find out what is available in Australia if you do not have access to what is actually available in Australia? So, you know, yes, we know about Ozempic, but how did we know about Ozempic? You know, and now there's Mounjaro, and these are all type 2 diabetic drugs that people are using even for weight loss. And like, it's just, to me, the harder you make it, the more black market like you make it, the more enticed people are anyway to still do it. And I would just prefer that they are open, give us a guideline for what kind of, like, standardize the guideline for what kind of information should actually be planted here. Like, what
can't talk about product specific, right? Like, you can't market a product, that we all understand. But why can't a cannabis clinic exist as a specialty? I think, like, you know, they regard pain as a specialty, right? Like, I'm a pain specialist, right? There's other specialties that doctors prescribe particular things for. Why can't you be a cannabis specialist?
But that's what they're trying to say. You got to do it in a way that doesn't lead to enticement. But yet, if you look at surgeons and you look at their website, they advertise what kind of surgeries they can do. Like, how different
that's
is
their
this?
Product.
Yes, that's their product.
Yeah.
How different is this really? You know, but again, there's a lot of like matching that goes behind the scenes with that. And then, yes, some surgeons will only use some implants from specific companies. Are they kickbacks? Are we not talking about it? We are talking about it. Like, it's not really that's here that I'm talking about. What I'm really talking about is that there's affiliations to specific brands because it's the right rep, it's the right tutor, it's the right education at that moment, it's the right person who helped you along the line. Like, these doctors are dealing with new launches every single week from every single like avenue, whether it's diabetes, cholesterol, erectile dysfunction, depression, all of these things they are getting bombarded with. And then on top of that, we have like 500 products of cannabis. Like, it's very complex, and we definitely need an ecosystem of multiple healthcare people, not barriering us, but ushering us through this journey. And I think, you know, if they weren't pharmacists or doctors that limited us by specific regulation, like, oh, no, you don't have an SAS, or, oh, this doctor didn't send me his AP number, or, oh, you had that many repeats, or like, if we didn't have that and it was just talked about in a coaching session or stuff like that, we would accept it a lot better. Like, we would actually go, oh, yeah, I want you to be a part of my journey. Like, how many people, like, nobody puts a gun to your head and says, get a personal trainer. How many people get personal trainers? Like, you know, a couple of years back, every second person was a personal trainer. So all of these things that people want life coaches, people pay and they invest and they think about it as an investment into myself, but we don't see a healthcare practitioner as an investment into ourselves. But again, it
is fundamentally.
It is.
Yeah.
100%. And that's why, you know, there are some pharmacies that I highly endorse for the level of patient care, for the level of skill set that they have. some pharmacists I know have traveled overseas and done specific coursework through like Humboldt County. Like they're very educated. You're not talking about people who don't know nothing, right? But you've got to get access to those people as well. And the only way to get access to those people is either by finding that pharmacy, having that interaction with that pharmacist on that day that they work, you know. But those processes that they are bringing will really highlight the patient journey. But again, we're all stepping on our tippy toes going, am I going to get slapped for this? Am I not going to get slapped for this? And that's the part that I hate, because patients should be entitled to know, hey, if this one is unavailable today, would this one do the job for me? Or would it be best for me to go back to my doctor and talk to my doctor about this? Because we do that in pharmacy. We go, okay, there's no Lipitor today, brand affiliation. But if I speak to your doctor, I can get you a Crestor, another brand affiliation. If that doesn't work well for you, we can add as a troll. We've got our processes, we know. And guess what? I've got this great vitamin. We can make all of these processes for you and it's accepted. But all of a sudden here, it's really frowned upon. And, you know, yes, we have like some funky names like Bubba Mandarin Cookies, right?
Yum.
Yeah, yum, yum. I want
Blue
that
cheese.
That's the kind of cookies I like. That's the kind of cheese I like, you know? I like a good herb. Like, you know, it is, we've got funny names. And again, that's, you know, still in the stigma time where, you know, even sometimes I walk into pharmacies and they're really great pharmacy assistants, or, you know, they've been around for a really long time, this pharmacist manager, and she'll be like, what is this names that I have to deal with? Like this, like, you know, again, she mentioned like, you know, Mandarin cookies and, you know, this and that. And for them, it's really hard because, you know, it's a professional space and we're mixing and we're matching recreational touch points with a healthcare touch point.
That's it. It's so funny to think about the strain names. Like I couldn't imagine a pharmacist reading out, got one tub of green crack. Oh, you want that purple crack? Got it for you. You know, like
what about the other ones?
Some Alaskan thunderfuck.
Yeah.
You know, like
what's some of the other ones I've seen now? Purple Zurple.
Yeah, the purple Zurple.
Monkey Business.
Yes.
Flawless Victory. Like you've got again, not enticing at all. Not, you know, mentioning for any particular reason. It is just...
They're just products that exist.
They're products that exist. They're products that like literally have these funky names. And we in healthcare are going, ooh, you know, you've got like... what's this bottom? Mandarin. This one was orange.
The
No, this is Menta
but
Limone.
it's slurricane cross Cushman's. Like, what's that meant to mean to someone? But it's funny because there's a lineage that exists within, you know, the genetics, and it's funny because if doctors were actually a little more understanding of genetic timelines, they would understand. Same with the pharmacist, understand lineage of strain. Right? Like this orange cake would be very similar to that Mandarin cookies, right?
That's right.
It's like there's probably a few parents that are similar. So you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. But one's a bit more indica leaning, the other's a bit more sativa leaning. So you probably wouldn't actually say that they're the same product. Like you wouldn't try and sub that one for that one. But you would need, but how, as someone who doesn't understand the lineage and doesn't put that time in to put that research in or tries the product themselves, how are they meant to know that?
How are we, even as patients, supposed to know that if we don't get access to that information eventually, right?
Well, so Friendly Aussie Buds, hello. I thought about this a few years ago. Thought about it.
And I would want that when you're going to a clinic, that you are having access to that kind of information, because that's what your clinic is providing to you. That's what your doctors are prescribing for you. That's what that pharmacy in their partnership has on stock. So you're not waiting 7 days for them to find an order, find a piece of paperwork. Like they've just streamlined that process. They're trying to get it to you as fast as possible. That's actually most clinics' primary focus, is how the hell do we just get this in their hands instantaneously? And really, if they can provide you that information directly from their source, rather than having to go to Leafly, rather than having to go to all these other different American websites that then bring in different heritage strains that are mixed. Like you may get, a Skittles or something like that, or a Northern Lights, but it will have 2 different types of heritage.
2 different breeders.
Exactly. So it's actually negatively affecting us by not being able to have access to that information. So I hope that opens up some eyes in terms of what kind of education we're actually looking for our patients, because they deserve to. And the other part to that is patients will come in, and then there's a second lot of patients. Like your initial part of phase is a tasting phase. And I call it the tasting phase, because the tasting phase is this moment where you get access and you're like, oh, I want to try this, I want to try this, I want to try this. In general, that first 6 months, you'll rotate between maybe 6 to 8, maybe sometimes up to 10 or 12 different products. But come the following months, you've already got a couple that you just really like. And then you start keeping 4 that you just
and then you get 1 or 2 new ones. You
but
rotate.
4 that you just constantly have in your box, that's your favorite.
That's pretty much how I operate. And then I normally get 4 consistent, maybe 5, and then I'll have 2 to 3 that I'm like, oh, I want to try some new things and see how they're going.
That's it. So there's, even by 12 months, there's that 4 that you're consistent with. And
because what if it goes out of stock, right? That's why you want to try a few extras all the time, because once that product goes out of stock, which it does,
or discontinued,
it's sometimes so crap to find something at that same price point or similar quality that gives you just what you're looking for. It's not an easy time, and that's why I like to have the variety, because if it does go out, I'm like, that one was good enough. It didn't make the original roster, but it can be subbed in at any moment, and I'm like, fuck yeah, it's still good to go. And it's still not your favorite choice, but also it's for strain tolerance, because we do get tolerance. Yeah, that's a big one.
And if you get tolerance, like swap it out. Give it a couple of months away from it, and then have it again, and you'll actually feel the effects that you're looking for.
But sometimes it goes out of stock, and then you get the new stock, and it's like
and
you have it, and
go back.
and then it's garbage, and you're like, oh shit, I don't want this one anymore.
And I think that's what's important is these days there was a lot of momentum to just bring stuff in. Maybe some people, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but people who were organizing that first batches of stuff, it was a business deal. It not necessarily was a passionate choice. There are lots of brands these days that are coming in now with a very...
the quality is...
The specifics about it are much better, but I still have conversations with hard, heavy, consistent, daily, like from morning till nighttime, heavy hitters. And I'll be like, why'd you choose that this month? And it's because I got fucked up. It's really good. The high is we're still not even as patients fully choosing. It's the connoisseurs who are aware of, that terpene does that for me. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily the average user or the initial user that's coming in.
Very few.
That are even understanding of that. You need years of coaching your body.
I'm still learning. It's a never-ending thing. But every year you're just like, oh, I now pick up on these tones and this. And me and my partner, we like to when we have something new, or we've had it for a while, we never like to judge something on its first 3 smokes. You need kind of 4 sessions with it before you can really form an opinion. Because the first one, you're always like, oh my God, this is the best I've ever had. And then second, you're like, yeah, it's still good. And then third, fourth, you're like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. Yeah. But we always go, oh, where are you feeling it? Oh, it's in my shoulders. I'm feeling a little bit of anxiety in the chest. Oh, but my head's really clear. Like we'll describe where it's all sitting. Yeah. And, for me, I've been smoking for bloody so long. It's, I don't know, 10, 15, 14 years. I don't know, maybe 13, 14. I now really pick up on flavors, on tones, all these little things. But she's very new to it all, 3-4 years. And she's like, oh, yeah, this one does taste a little sweeter. Yeah, I get it. Meanwhile, I'm like, yeah, no, this one's got this like cherry undertone. And then there's this like little bit of butteriness that comes in the back. But then there's this gas that hits the nose. And she's like, you're making that up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's all there. But it's because I've been actively trying to. It's one thing to... how would I say, learn and read about it. The other is to try and imagine it and then do it again and again and actually practice it. It's really a practice thing. If you do it enough, you'll get there. It's just a skill.
Project. It becomes a passion project for so many people. Cure it right, look after it, like notice the grind, notice the inhale, like is it harsh on the back, what's the colors when you grind it, like it's actually like a little mini,
it's a hobby,
it's a
right?
hobby.
It's a hobby.
Yeah.
For me, vaporizers and weed are like a bit of a hobby.
Yeah.
Well, Fab Gang, I want to thank Mimi for coming on because this has been really fun. I like being able to talk the shit with someone who knows the shit, who is in the medical space. It's very rare to find. I would say of the people in the medical space I've interacted with, there's maybe about 15% that really understand the culture pretty well. And I think Mimi is one of them. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's really nice to know that you're educating doctors and pharmacists about the plant with good passion and good understanding of both the plant and the patient. I think that's probably a lot of the time. I think one of them is always missed.
Always.
You know, someone's always missing it, and it's rare to find someone that understands both sides. And I think that's where you and I actually click really well. We understand a little bit more of what goes on in the back, but we also understand what goes on, well, in the sesh.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on. Anything you'd like people to follow you on or reach out to you with, feel free to plug it.
Definitely. Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming. I definitely do appreciate the connections. I think my favorite place for people to follow me is on LinkedIn. So my name is Mimi the Green Queen Sener, self-dubbed. We can always talk about that on our next podcast as to why that ended up being a bit of my title. But in general, I try to give a lot of education. I, share anything new that I find, good opinions and just things that happen in the industry through LinkedIn. So it's a great way to connect. And again, feel free to connect, ask the right questions, create the conversation, the people, the plant, the product, the purpose, all of this is really interconnected. And it starts from something from us, and really the additional P word for there is passion. Like it really does come, you can become quite passionate about it. And if you use it appropriately, you can really, reap some significant benefits. So for me, true Canna believer, join me on my journey to share whatever I can. I'm always here to educate. And if you have questions, just reach out.
Thank you.
Talking about the smoking life and our love for buds and nuts and everything in between, and how we feel when we hit it. No filter, no judgments.